More Autistic History, the Autism Wars. This is part 6 and a continuation of a letter that was written by a self-advocate and a patient of Bettelheim's back in the 90s to Chicago Reader. So we do get the voice of lived experience here as well. I shared the first part of this letter in part 5. So the title of this letter on chicagoreader.com, and it is still available there. You can search for The Monster of Midway and find it. And it is written by Alida M. Jatic, Jatic, and it was published April 4th, 1991. Now I'm going to show the second part. In the first part, there was a mention of compliance because of Bettelheim telling his patients there were worse places for them to be that included electric shock. Now, I think this is a conversation he was talking about Ivar Lovaas and his therapy for autistic children. Anyhow, that just kind of caught my attention and made me think of that. But let's go to the rest of this letter now. And again, caution, this is a very difficult letter to read and to hear, so know that going forward. Bettelheim was interviewed before his death by David James Fisher, Society magazine, March-April 1991. In that interview, Bettelheim said, "I think that anybody who spent time in a German concentration camp does not necessarily have to be an extermination camp. Never gets rid of the feeling of guilt and shame. You have to suppress your normal reactions." He described his feelings of torment at not having dared attempt to rescue his cousin who was being beaten in the camps. "I felt absolutely sick reading that because I watched Bettelheim beat up on so many other kids and I never said a word. I am sorry about that now, regardless of what the consequences might have been." One of my dorm mates wrote in a letter that she called for help when Bettelheim was beating her. She was justifiably appalled that nobody, neither a staff member nor another kid, spoke up for her or tried to intervene. Of course, I was there when that happened. A close friend of mine was beaten while sitting less than a foot away from me in the dining room, and here again, I never said a word. The distortion went further than that. To avoid punishment or to get a little bit of attention from the counselors, I would sometimes play act whatever Bettelheim and the staff seemed to want me to be. Like all abandoned children, we tried to get affection and approval from staff members, even though they were convinced we were disturbed. Since he taught his staff that it was therapeutic to treat us as though we were 2-year-olds, I often acted babyish dependency at the permanent cost of my self-esteem. Since nobody believed me when I told the truth, I spun out wild tales, volumes of nonsensical Freudian interpretation. Whatever I thought the staff expected me to say. Soon it reached the point where I no longer knew what the truth was anymore. I am still battling the confusion, shame, and guilt which result from my having gone along with this pressure. I have to ask, if Bettelheim's concentration camp survivors' guilt was anything more than crocodile tears, why did he put me and others in the same position he claimed to have been in? Did he get some truly satanic satisfaction out of proving that everyone can be stripped of free will if the pressure is sufficiently intense. That everyone can be made to sell out, to do wrong, to freeze in terror, to believe falsehoods. That there is no place for courage, honor, and truth in this world? Or was he just venting his hatred and fear of kids, spontaneity, and the human spirit, a hatred which grew from his own beliefs long before the I don't know how to say Nazis came to power? Alida Amniotic or Jotic. This was again written by a former patient of Bettelheim's and sharing their lived experience. And take a break here for a second. Let's see, in 1997, the psychiatrist Peter Kramer wrote, "The Ford Foundation was willing to underwrite innovative treatments for autistic children, so Bettelheim labeled his children autistic." Few actually met the definition of the newly minted syndrome. So it looks like in 2002, a book that included this quote by Michael Rudder, who had observed many people made a mistake in going from a statement in regards to refrigerator mother's theory here, which is undoubtedly true, that there is no evidence that autism has been caused by poor parenting, to the statement that it has been disproven. Quote, "It has not actually been disproven. It has faded away simply because, on the one hand, a lack of convincing evidence, and on the other hand, an awareness that autism was a neurodevelopmental disorder of some kind." So I'm going to jump back over to the Autism History Project, the page they have on Bruno Bettelheim, and share the last paragraph and a half. So it says here, critics argued that Bettelheim's insistence on an 85% cure rate was unrealistic, if not impossible. So the last paragraph here says that such an icon of humanitarian treatment for autistic children could be thoroughly discredited by the time of his death illustrates not only the salient details of Bettelheim's biography, it also underlines the larger controversies that have turned basic questions about autism upside down and inside out over time. What should count as valid scientific evidence? What does ethical treatment look like? What do children with autism and their loved ones really need and deserve? Great questions.